All right, we made it up to chapter 17 of Blue Collar Leadership. We'll be knocking that out today, and kind of excited to talk about today's chapter because I get to introduce someone from my life, and this person is in my life only because of all of my growth and development that I've been sharing with you since 2008. We talked about who you are is who you attract. I would never ever in my life have attracted this person to me had I not changed who I was. And I call him today, you know, I see him as a mentor and as a friend, and he's actually featured here in my opening quote for chapter 17. And so I'm going to read that quote to you and introduce him, tell you a little bit about him, and share with you about him. Chapter 17 is Leaders Have Followers. Subtitle is The Difference Between a Leader and a Boss is What They Value. And then here's the opening quote from my friend and mentor, Jimmy Collins. A leader is someone who has followers. If there are no followers, there is no leader. A person may have subordinates, workers, admirers, associates, co-workers, friends, and people who report to him or her. A person may have authority over the other people. A person may hold an elective office. And a person may influence a large number of people. But that does not make that person a leader if there are no followers. Again, that's Jimmy Collins. You may not have heard of Jimmy Collins, but I'm sure you've heard of the organization that Jimmy helped basically build from startup, basically. And that organization is Chick-fil-A. And Truett Cathy hired Jimmy Collins in 1967. They just celebrated their 50-year anniversary of Chick-fil-A. And I think Jimmy was the first, second, or third employee that Truett hired when he decided to create Chick-fil-A. And Jimmy worked with Truett for almost 33 years, I believe, and he retired in 2001 as president and chief operating officer of Chick-fil-A. And it doesn't even make sense that I've attracted Jimmy into my life. And I found out he wrote a book called Creative Followership, and I reached out and I connected with him on LinkedIn. And Rhea and I went up and met with him actually at the Dwarf House, where Truett's first restaurant opened in 1947, which they later converted into a Chick-fil-A Dwarf House. But so for the first 20 years, Truett only had basically one restaurant, maybe two, I think. He might have had another one, but the one that I really know of. But it wasn't until 20 years later, 1967, that Chick-fil-A came to be. And Jimmy Collins was a huge part of that. And Jimmy is an amazing individual. And so when I met him, I reached out to him on LinkedIn. We ended up talking and on the phone, and he agreed to meet with me and Rhea. So we went to that Dwarf House, had about a 2-hour private breakfast with Jimmy, and he poured into us, and we really enjoyed meeting him. And you know, I call him on the phone from time to time, and we did a radio show with him. If you go to topstoryleadership.com and you go into our press room, there's several radio recordings on there where we were on Radio X and Business Radio X in Atlanta. And one of those we stopped by. We got Jimmy to go in there. We got him set up so he could go on and talk about his book, Creative Followership. You know, it's one way that we could serve him. You know, I'm thinking, what can I do for Jimmy Collins? And I knew he's wanting to get word out about his book, and we had some opportunities to be on Radio X, so I was able to help Jimmy out. And we set that up. We stopped by Jimmy's house and got to meet his wife, and we drove him up to the radio station, and for about an hour, Jimmy talked about creative followership. You know, we could have talked. We didn't want to talk. It wasn't about us. It was about pouring into Jimmy and serving him, giving him a platform that we had influence to create. So we didn't talk much. So if you listen to that video, you'll hear a lot about Jimmy, and he's teaching some really, I mean, not a video, an audio. He's teaching some really, really good stuff about leaders and followers, and hope you enjoy it if you go check it out. But don't expect to hear Rhea and I very much. We were just in the background listening. We may have asked a couple of questions, but leadership again is influence. So everybody is a leader. It's just what level do you want to lead at? On a scale of 1 to 10, everybody's at least a 1, unless they live in a cave by themselves. If they're interacting with other people, you at least are on the scale. Your main question is, how much do you want to grow your influence? Everybody's on the scale, but not everybody's at the same level. But leaders have followers. Your boss may not be a leader. If you're not choosing to follow him or her, and you have to because of choices you've made and you don't really want to, but you have to because you got bills and you don't have options, that person's not a leader. And you're not a follower. They're a boss and you're a worker. And I learned that from Jimmy. So Rhea's coming back. I see her pulling up, so I got to give up her office before she comes in the door and takes it away from me. But see you next time. Have a great day.